right, so when we start talking about informal purchasing, we are talking about micro purchase and small purchase. And this is kind of a variation on the chart that you saw earlier. And we have these regulations cited where if you want to go back and read exactly what is written in the regs, we recommend you use ECFR. That's the most recent Code of Federal Regulation that you can find electronically. And so you can go in and search and find these exact regulations. So, kind of the summary, the micro purchase is where you buy supplies or services not exceeding $3,500. That is $3,500 per transaction, not per year. The kicker on this is you have to spread your purchases equitably among qualified suppliers. So, you can award this without soliciting competitive quotations if the price is reasonable. And I'll go into more detail on these things. Now, when we go in to do the procurement review, we are looking at micro purchases and we're asking these questions. Are the prices reasonable? Are they necessary cost? And I will tell you, as part of the procurement review, there are some red flags popping up on things that were charged to child nutrition accounts, and we have had to go back and have child nutrition programs pay back the CN account because they were charging things that were not allowable. If it's not necessary to operate your program, it's not allowable. Then we look, was this purchase distributed equitably among qualified vendors? All right. I'm trying to make myself not give all the examples till I get later. Buy American is a part of micro purchase for agricultural products only. You do not have to use Buy American for buying paper, for buying equipment, for buying, it is agricultural products. All right, and then, so the micro purchase is the, quote, easiest. Then we get into small purchase procedures, which, again, you've got the federal regulations. And here is where you have to think about what type of operation am I and what state am I in and what are my state requirements and what are my local requirements. So, in Louisiana, we have the $30,000 limit for using the small purchase requirement. For charter schools in Louisiana, and the federal limit is $150,000. And then you have to think, does my district or does my school corporation or whatever your LEA is, that local education authority, do we have a threshold? I've received procurement tools in, and some locals have $1,000 small purchase threshold. So, you know, if it's over $1,000, they have to get quotes. And guess what? A whole lot of people don't know if they have a local threshold. So if you're not sure, you need to go back to your organization and talk to your superintendent or your business official and find out, because it varies greatly. Varies greatly. All right, now here's another little tweak. We have up here a minimum of 2 price quotes. That's federal. Guess what's in Revised Statute 38? How many do they want for, if it's over 10,000 and up to 30,000, the state of Louisiana wants you to have 3. Now, how many of you want to keep up with, okay, if it's over 3,500 up to 10,000, I've got to have 2, and if it's 10,000 to 30, you decide and you put in your procurement plan, if you're going to get 3 quotes, write it in there and get 3 quotes.
Including charter schools.
Including charter schools, yes. So, and the thing about the small purchase procedures, the quotes are required where you have assurance that there's some competition. And if you send out and ask for quotes, the people you are asking for, that's their signal. Wait a minute, somebody else is going to give them a price, so if I want this, I better give them a good price. Okay? So, the benefits. You can react quickly. If you need something immediately, you have that opportunity to go buy it without having to have that 2 or 3 week lead time to advertise a bid and all that kind of stuff. It's very helpful for small SFAs. Small FSAs really have a tough time getting competitive pricing. And, you know, and everything's relative, but there are some large SFAs that have over $60,000 in micro purchase, and there are small SFAs at $60,000 their annual budget. So we're dealing with all different sizes. And then this is also helpful if you are wanting to purchase local. So you have some opportunities with local procurement. This, again, is a local decision. During my time when I worked at the Institute, and I've actually still done a little bit of training for them, and I talked to directors and supervisors, a lot of people are gung-ho for buying local. And there are benefits. There are benefits for marketing your program. You support your local community. You might lower some cost. And it might help you increase participation. But you have to decide, is it worth the extra effort that I have to put into making sure the procurement follows the rules? So that's something that's up to you. We're not going to get into a lot of details. If you want more information, USDA has come out. This resource, I think it's just a little bit over a year old. This Procuring Local Foods for Child Nutrition Programs. But there are some things you have to think about. If you think, oh, I'm going to be buying 5 different pieces of equipment, and I think each one of them is going to cost $2,500, so I'm only going to buy them one at a time. Not a good idea. You cannot split your procurements up just to fall below a limiting purchasing threshold. So that is something that, and if you, when I get into the procurement process, this is why we look at a complete year, and this is why we look at the previous year. Because if you did that and you went back 5 different times to that same vendor and you didn't buy from another vendor, you are not meeting the micro purchase requirements. Okay? And if we're seeing something like that, I'm going to ask you, why did you not use a different procurement method? And you're going to have to justify it. And justification does not include because I like this vendor and I like this salesman and it's easier for me just to buy the same thing. That is not justification. You know, that is circumventing free and open competition. Okay? And then if you're just going to buy one item, and I've actually been kind of surprised at how often I've seen this. If you're just going to buy one item in that category and that's all you're going to buy for the whole year, yeah, use micro purchase if it's below $3,500. So, all right, here are the actual things you need to think about if you're going to use micro purchase. Will each transaction be below $3,500? And this is unless it's limited by local requirements. If your local requirements say anything over $1,000, you have to have a quote. You're going to have to buy it under small purchase and get quotes. And it's so confusing to people when we send this procurement tool out and they see these headings and they say less than $150,000 under small purchase, and they go and they say, well, I spent less than $150,000 with this vendor, I'm going to put it under small purchase. That's not your decision-making process. If you bought it under small purchase, you have 2 or 3 quotes. Yes?
When you say quotes, are you saying that you have to go through the formal bid process, or you have to get 3 quotes?
No, and that is a wonderful question, because even with the USDA training, they used bid and quote interchangeably. To me, quotes match up with small purchase, and your quote may be an email that you printed off and you kept. It may be something that looks like an order from a vendor that has their, you know, you've got to make sure it has their company name. You've got to make sure that their quote matches what you solicited. And if it is food, you've got to have documentation showing that Buy American. So, to me, when I ask for quotes, I want what the vendor sent you in response to what you ask for. And that's a lot of terminology things. And I've tried to get better, because we a lot of times will ask for a bid. Well, what do we really want? Do you want a bid solicitation? Do you want the bid pricing that vendors submitted back to you? Do you want the contract for that bid? What do you want? So when I ask for a quote, I'm asking for what that company sent back to you as what they're going to charge you for that product or service you ask for. Yeah. Difference between a quote and a bid. Okay. Reasonable purchase prices. Who decides what reasonable is? It's a judgment. If you're paying $10 for a loaf of bread, that's not reasonable. If you're paying $2.87 for a loaf of bread, that is probably reasonable. And same thing with any of these products. If you are, and look, I've learned a whole lot about what people are paying for things. If you're a really small SFA, 45 cents for a carton of milk may be reasonable. If you're a huge SFA, 18 cents may be reasonable because it's volume driven. And that is why when you are even doing micro purchases, you want to include some kind of cost price analysis. And so how you get this depends on what that product is. And it's usually much simpler when you're asking for quotes. And so if you were doing if you were looking for quotes on a piece of equipment, where would you find out what you might be planning to pay for 5 convection ovens? You could Google it, look on the internet. That's what a lot of people do. If you network with other people, your peers, you may think, oh, so-and-so in the next parish bought some of these last year. Let me call them and ask. What do you not want to do?
Call the vendor and ask them.
Do not call the vendors and ask them. If vendors work on specifications, if they do anything like that, they are disqualified from bidding on that item. How do you know? How are we ever going to know that? Well, it may be hard to know, but you need to follow the rules. Because I can tell you what happens. People talk. People go to meetings. And you hear things. And they say things like, well, so-and-so with this company told me it would cost so-and-so for this brand. You don't want that to happen, so don't ask the vendor. Don't ask the vendor. All right, so reasonable yes.
I'm sorry, so I know you can't ask the vendor, but if you go to the manufacturer, is that different?
The manufacturer's not going to be bidding, but I would feel better just Googling it and finding it out there somewhere. Because a lot of companies will post prices on the internet. They're usually a lot higher than you can get if you do a competitive procurement. So, you know, the problem with going to the distributor is what are they going to do when you hang up the phone? They're going to call...
I'm talking about getting the specifications.
Oh, the specs.
I'm not talking about price.
The specifications, you should be able to find cut sheets on their website. Yeah. Now that's okay. I'm talking, don't call them and ask them for information from the manufacturer, because when they hang up the phone, they're going to go look up where you are, and they're going to call the person handling their brand in that area. You know, it's just, Babette, are you thinking that?
With this
Or
figure,
Courtney?
you could use the state contracts as part of your cost analysis. and
That would be.
at that point,
That would be a way you could use, if you can find them on their website. Yeah, that's a good, yeah. That is a way you could use those state prices.
Okay, so that memo we got about not using state contracts.
No, you're using this in your cost analysis before you send out your request for quote or request for bid. You're not using it as one of your quotes. Okay?
And just curious, is it because not every state has a state contract? Is that why USDA is so adamant about it?
No, it is because the state contract does not contain the required federal provisions. And when the Department of Ed worked with the state procurement and gave them the exact wording that USDA wanted, that wording was changed. And it wasn't sent back to USDA for their approval.
And
That's why.
A lot of the bids for the state were the things that like chemicals
Right.
and paper and those kinds of things. The state of Louisiana they did a bid for Autoflow products. They did a bid for Spartan chemical products.
Right.
But they did different distributors for the same product. So they bid Spartan chemicals. And they sought bids from different vendors, but they didn't use the wording for equal. My understanding is that state law requires them somehow or other to bid it that way. And so, the state and the feds are conflicting. We did win the argument that because when the state of Louisiana Office of State Purchasing gets involved, and when you use one of their state contracts, they get a 1% kickback from that vendor at the end of the year. And
How about 1% fee?
okay,
I kind of cringe at that.
but and it originally USDA was saying that 1% was a cost plus percentage of cost. And I argued and argued and argued with them. They finally agreed that it is not a cost plus a percentage of cost contract. We won that part of the argument. So, but for chemical companies where they bid just one product and no or equal, my opinion is that USDA is never going to approve that. So it's their methodology that conflicts.
Okay. Here is where I've seen the most errors on micro purchases. The SFA has to spread purchases equitably among all qualified sources. If I see, Walmart has $15,892 and Dollar General has $200 and there's nobody else, is that spread equitably among all qualified sources? No. So you are not, if you're doing that, you are not meeting the micro purchase requirements.
But if you document that Dollar General didn't have some of the products that you were looking for, would
That can come into play, yes, but the other thing is, if there's a Walmart, there are usually multiple other vendors that are available.
We don't have a Walmart.
Yeah, so, and I will tell
Two
you,
hardware stores, and one of them is high as a cat's back, and the other one is
so,
not.
okay,
You're supposed to pay $10 for a gallon of paint this week and $5 for the next week?
no, in that case, what would you do? Use small purchase.
I'm just using that
Yeah.
as an example. I mean, everything. I mean, a piece of plywood. is,
Yeah.
You know, it's different.
All you have to do on that, bump it up and use small purchase, and then you don't have to spread it equitably because you are using that price.
A lot of times I think y'all are doing small purchase when you think you're doing micro purchase.
Yeah.
Because and I know that you all are responsible people and you're responsible with your district's money. And so unless it's an emergency and I gotta go buy bread for lunch, you're gonna change prices.
Yeah.
So
And-
if you're going to, if you're checking prices, then you're doing small quotes, you're not doing micro purchases. And if Walmart's always cheaper, then you certainly don't wanna buy from Dollar General even though the price is higher. So you're gonna turn that into a small quote rather than a micro purchase. Just because it's under $3,500 does not mean you have to use the micro purchase method. You can use the small purchase method for any dollar amount up to the $30,000.
And I think also what happened, particularly in the first year that we did the procurement reviews. You know, I talked about we were looking back and everybody looked back and they thought, I don't have any written quotes, so I've got to put it under micro purchase. And now that I know I need to have those written quotes, I'm going to buy it under small purchase and make sure that I keep my quotes. I mean, that made sense to me. And the thing is, somebody in your organization has to understand these principles and follow them. If you are letting all of your managers go out and pick up items at the local grocery store, they need to know, wait a minute, if you're not getting quotes, you've got to spread the wealth. You can't always go to this one. I talked to one director and she said, you know, I have schools spread over 40 miles. So this one is going to go to this store, this one's going to this other store, and you know, they were doing that regionally. But as a SFA, they were distributing the wealth. It was spread equitably. Okay.
And put it in your procurement
Plan, yes, yes. All right, now,
Virginia, before you go on, did everybody understand what Virginia just said?
Yes.
And how that makes sense?
Yes.
okay, so when it comes time for the procurement review, I'm going to look at all of the micro purchases and I'm going to ask you for, I'm going to select some vendors and I'm going to ask you for invoices or receipts. And I'll put both of these words up here. USDA used invoices, and then a lot of times when I asked for an invoice, I got that end of month bill when what I really wanted was a receipt or what I call a delivery ticket. Okay? So when I ask for information under micro purchase, I have asked for all of the micro purchases for that vendor for the year. If you're a large district and you had 68 micro purchases with a vendor, I don't want all 68. What I did, I looked at your ledger, and we're going to get to ledger. I looked at that list of every invoice from that vendor, and then I would pick like 3. Because if I look at your, some people call it vendor paid list. if I look, and let's use Walmart as an example. If I looked and you had 68 purchases from Walmart, I expect to see some kind of ticket number, and then I expect to see that dollar amount, and I look down and say, are any over $3,500? And if not, that part of micro purchasing is met. If I select a micro purchase vendor and they have 5 invoices, I'm going to ask you for all 5. So that is how I begin to see if you're compliant. So now let's look. We're going to go through a few examples. So I didn't do a printout, I just did these on the screen.
Okay.
The SFA purchased $280 in food and supplies from Walmart in August. And in September, they bought $320 in food and supplies from Dollar General. And in October, they purchased 15 from Walmart, 35 from Dollar General. Is this compliant with micro purchase? And I'll give you a little hint. Do you need more information? All right, so you remember the questions that we ask on micro purchase. First of all, do any of these exceed $3,500? No. All right. Are they distributed equitably among all qualified sources?
No, we don't know.
We don't know. All right. If you are a charter school, no, let's say you're a residential facility out in the swamps 30 miles from town, this would be looked at, and you had 2 micro purchases, it would be looked at differently than if you're in Baton Rouge where you have multiple vendors available. All right, and then what about the equitable distribution? And let's pretend that these are the only 2. Are these equitably distributed? Yeah. And you know, and I have seen $14,000 and something for one and $300 for another. That's not equitably distributed. All right. Here's one, and this one actually is pretty common. You've got one purchase for printing applications for $2,354. There's no other printing services during the entire year. Is this compliant? Okay, is it under $3,500? Yes. Is it spread equitably? Well, how can you spread one purchase among more?
And if you only have one printing service, then
Here's a question.
In our district, we have a graphic arts department that does all the printing for the district, and we pay them for printing what we need. I have wondered about that. It goes.
Technically, I think USDA would expect you to have some quotes. Babette, you want to? I think they would expect you to at least see if you're getting fair prices.
Are you required by your district to use that?
Pretty much. The superintendent wants us to use in-house, you know.
And how does the price compare?
That's why I think they would want a quote, just where you would.
Yeah, and I get that.
Yeah.
I do.
Yeah.
Really. But I think their price is pretty good because I've looked out already for prices on what we get printed. But I mean, you don't, I just know that because I've done it, but I don't have it documented. you know?
Yeah,
So,
I would,
good idea,
I would do some quotes.
yeah.
And plus that also keeps your in-house price. I think it would help keep it down. And again, that's probably something that would be hard to pick up, but I would recommend you get at least some quotes where you know you're getting a reasonable price. The reasonable price part, I've really had no issues with that at all. And I think it goes back to what Babette said, is we do recognize so many of you really do try and treat this money like it's your own. And I'm like, I like getting value for what I'm paying out. So that actually has not been an issue. All right, there are only 3 stores in this small town. Store A, you've got 20 purchases, 14,000. Store B, 12 purchases, 13. I think I may have said 13. And then store C, 14,000. Okay. Is every purchase below $3,500? We don't know from this. So this would require looking at the actual delivery ticket or receipt. You can kind of say, okay, well, with 20 purchases, you would think probably so. All right. Are the purchases spread equitably? Yeah. On that, you're looking at dollars, not on number of purchases. Did they spread the wealth? And then we said up front they only have 3, and they are purchasing from all 3. So this is why some of the time I may be asking some follow-up questions after you send this information in. So, all right. We've got kind of a natural break here. If somebody want to stand up. We've got about 10 more minutes to go until lunch is scheduled. So we will, once lunch comes, they usually alert me.
Lunch is here,
Oh, okay.
so completely go on.
Okay, so whenever I get to where I'm going to stop. All right, now we're going to go next into small purchase procurement. We've already gone through these requirements. 150,000 federal and charter, state of Louisiana 30,000, and then whatever your local requirement is. One of the things people are not accustomed to maintaining is, what is your solicitation? What are you asking for? Because so many times we've done quotes by phone. You need enough of a specification that you are going to get quotes on the same product. That's fair. That's fair to the vendors. And if you are asking for quotes on agricultural products, you need that Buy American. You have got to find a way to include that when you are buying the products. You have an evaluation phase where you look at those quotes that have prices and you have documentation of whatever specs or criteria. You know, are you asking for a quote and you want it delivered to 5 different schools? That's the kind of stuff you've got to include when you're sending out your request for quotes. And then what kind of contract management is there? if they quoted you one thing and when you look at that delivery ticket and it doesn't match, you know, you've got an issue there. And this is where we documented this Louisiana Revised Statute 38. So if you go back and somebody in your business office or whatever, you know, you can show this is your documentation that you need. With these solicitations, did you put things in there that restricted competition? Were the specifications clear? This is basic procurement or purchasing. You want that solicitation to get you the best price you can. All right? Do you have the records? And I will say, last year I saw this more often than this year, where people didn't have quotes, because several people told me, you know, I went online and got some quotes and I forgot to print it out. I would recommend that when you are doing quotes on these products, keep you a file folder and stick that kind of stuff in there. And so if you're doing quotes on certain products, keep all those little documents that you know may be asked for in the future, where all you have to do is go pull that little folder and you've got your documents. I just received Saturday in the mail, and I mean, it is like a ream of paper from a SFA on the information that I asked for. Now, they were a larger SFA. You know, I believe in working smarter, and so if you can keep this stuff together as you're going, it will make it easier for you in the future. And how long do you have to keep documents? 3 years plus the current year. All right? When I look at these quotes, I'm going to look and say, okay, did they award this to the correct vendor based on the solicitation? And then I'm going to look at least 3 invoices / receipts / delivery tickets that show that the product solicited matched up, the price matched up with what they quoted you. Check that off and move on. During the review, the micro purchase and the small purchase are the fastest part of the review for me. You know, they're usually they're less complicated. All right, when we start talking about non-compliance, usually what I have seen is that they don't have, you know, the SFA didn't keep the quotes. That's probably the number one thing on small purchase. And, you know, basically you're looking at something from the previous school year. What I have asked in the way of documentation on corrective action, I've made them show me that for this school year, they have issued a solicitation, and if it needed Buy American, that it was included, where it showed that they were in compliance for this year. You know, you still got dinged for not doing it for last year. And the number one thing has been keeping up with those quotes. Okay? All right.
But it doesn't cost us any money, right?
Not yet.
We just have to have correct, you have to show.
You have to show correction. Mm-hmm. Oops.
do is when there is a finding, and we know you can't go back,
Right.
you can't go back and make it up. But if we see, and we had an ME this last year, and
Management evaluation, that's where the feds come and check the state.
Okay.
And we were written up on, because we were coming in and our corrective action was attestation statements. Well, USDA said, this is not enough. You have to get the corrective action. You just can't get a statement. Because what we were seeing is that in many cases, not typically our public schools, but in a lot of situations where we were writing the same attestation statement every time they were reviewed. And so we had repeat findings on the same thing, that they attested they were gonna make changes and they didn't. So now it kind of became a whole different animal this year, where we have to get corrective action. So my goal as a reviewer is to get that corrective action and before I leave, if at all possible. So, and what we can do with that, sometimes we can turn a finding into technical assistance, depending on what it is. We can say, and then it was corrected. Sometimes if it has to be a finding, and we really are trying to make a technical assistance rather than finding. But if it is a finding, we can say, this is corrected, we saw the document from this year. You know, and so we have to kind of rethink what we're doing for corrective action. So, and our best thing that we can write is no further corrective action needed. That's our goal. So, even if it was not good last year and you've made those corrections, it's gonna be acknowledged.
So when we have it like next year, so the procurement review is gonna be from this year's stuff?
Right, and Babette, if you're gonna talk, we wanna get the audio recorded, so you may have to come up here. Yeah, when I send out the procurement tool, actually, we're gonna get into that right after lunch. So let's hold that question. Let's look at these activities and then we'll break for lunch. So this is a small purchase, and they got quotes from the internet, and they got quotes from 2 companies, but the quotes don't match what they ask for. Are they compliant? No. All right. They've got one quote from the internet, and they either printed it or they saved it as a PDF where they've got a record of it. They've got one quote from a local company. They've got Buy American for food products. And their cost analysis shows they're expecting to spend $9,000. Are they compliant? You need 3 in Louisiana if it's $10,000 to $30,000. Good point though, if your procurement plan says you're going to get 3 quotes, you are not compliant. If your procurement plan says you're going to get 2 quotes unless it's over $10,000, this would be compliant. You see how it's so difficult to give you hard and fast answers in general, because quite often it depends. If this is a SFA and their district or their charter school or whatever requires 3 quotes, if it's over $1,000, they're not compliant. I cannot tell you how many times something was written in a procurement plan and the procurement documents that were sent to me clearly showed they were not following their written procurement plan. So, your take-home message is, if you don't have a procurement plan, you're getting a sample to work from this afternoon. And if you do have a procurement plan and you didn't bring it, you're going to go back and you're going to read that thing And you're gonna use these slides and say, do I have the right things in my procurement plan? Okay, I've got, these are very similar. All right, they've got one quote from the internet, one quote local company, Buy American for food, cost analysis $39,000. No, they are not compliant. Why?
Over $30,000.
Okay, two different things. Yeah, first of all, what's a small purchase limit in Louisiana? Okay, they're gonna have to do what? Either IFB, invitation for bid, or an RFP, whatever. All right? Same thing, but the cost analysis is $19,000. Compliant or not? No. Why? They need 3 quotes because in Louisiana, 10 to 30,000, you're supposed to have 3 quotes. Okay. All right. We can do questions now, or we're going to have a lot more time after lunch for more individual activities. But lunch is here, and so anybody have a question that's burning on their mind before we go to lunch?
I was about to ask you, because I don't want to.
Okay. All right.